I'm Page McConnell. Welcome to my rig. This is my Wurlitzer 200 electric piano. These were manufactured between the mid-50s and the mid-80s. And the way that this keyboard generates its sound, it's also an electromagnetic pickup, but instead of a string, it is a small tine, which is hit with a hammer, same sort of mechanism. You hit the hammer, hit the key, and it causes the hammer to strike this, and this vibrates, and that's what causes the sound of each note, that little tine vibrating. And this little piece of lead on the end is actually how you can tune it. If you file it down, the vibrations will get quicker and it'll go higher. You could solder more lead on to try to make a lower pitch. It's not an easy thing to do to try and tune these things, but this is really cool. This is the sound that each note has one of these little tines and little reeds, actually, I guess is what these are called. And this is how Wurlitzer makes their electric pianos. This is an instrument that I've used more and more, incorporating more and more over the last few projects. Wrote a lot of the songs for the Kosvat Voxed album with this, and same with Sci-Fi Soldier, and just it's become more and more of a staple in my rig here, and I go to it more and more as time goes on. The Wurlitzer 200. On top of the Wurlitzer, I have the Moog 1. Technically Moog, that's Bob Moog, who was one of the great innovators in synthesizers and passed away a few years ago, but started building synths in the 60s, and the company continued with a time where it wasn't quite owned by him, but came back, and now it's making these incredible instruments. On our last album, we had a song called Thread, and I was using this a lot for some of the synth overdubs I did for that studio project. So in this patch, I have the touch sensitivity assigned to pitch. So when I push down harder, instead of giving some sort of a weird trippy sound, it gives, it raises it up a half step. So that is just an example of one of the very small parameters that you can address here with this keyboard, and it is I think I could spend the rest of my life trying to learn this thing and would still feel like I'm just barely scratching the surface. So, as my rig has developed over the years, I have moved things around a little bit. It used to be that I had the piano in front of me facing the crowd, and over here I would have my organ and Nord, which now lives sort of behind me instead. So there's a lot of times where I'll reach over here thinking, oh, I'm going to go play the organ with my left hand, only to find there is no organ over here, the organ's over there, and I can't really reach that the same way. So at first that was a little bit of a challenge, but through the use of MIDI, MIDI is a language that keyboards use to speak with each other. I'm able to dial up an organ sound on this synthesizer, send it over to the Moog, and play it over here. One very important thing about the MIDI which I want to mention is, and we'll get into this a little bit more when I get over to my Prophet keyboard developed by Dave Smith. Dave Smith, who started Sequential Circuits, also, and created these keyboards, also invented MIDI and opened it up with the world. Dave Smith created MIDI and gave it to the world to share so that everyone would be able to use it, and all the keyboards can talk in this language with each other. And it was a great, great selfless thing he did, and a beautiful thing. So that is how I'm using it now. So I'll give you an example. The sounds that I have been playing for you are the sounds that are built in, but if I turn them off, I can give myself the ability to play organ over here without having an organ over here. And it has made my life so much easier instead of having to figure out how I'm going to reach my hand behind myself to play that sound. So songs like Down with Disease, for instance, or Sample in a Jar, a lot of the older songs where I had this set up for so long, I will be playing and wanting to play both at the same time, an organ sound and a piano sound. The next keyboard I would like to talk about is my Nord Stage 3. I started using these Nord keyboards around the time we started doing, I guess it was actually when I did the chilling, thrilling sounds of the haunted house. And I needed something, we had this idea of creating an album, of using that old sound effects album from the 60s and creating songs around them and sampling the woman's voice who spoke, and it's become a really fun part of our show. And this is what some of those samples sound like.
Some people keep birds as pets in their homes. Not you. You fear the feathered creatures with their sharp beaks and clutching talons.
And the band plays on. And they attack.
They attack!
This is a keyboard which has really good sampling capability, and that's the reason that I ended up with this one. As well as using that, it's also a great keyboard on many different levels and has great sounds on its own. I use some of the sounds for instance, when Trey and Mike are doing their Turtle in the Clouds dance, I'll use the synth sound from this keyboard for that. And should something go wrong with my piano, it would be my spare piano as well. It's just got a lot of great sounds. It could also be my spare organ should both of my organs not work out. The Nord lives on top of my Hammond organ. 1968 Hammond B3 organ. Hammond started building organs in 1935. The B3 came along in 1955. The way the Hammond generates its sounds is through a tone wheel. So there is a metal wheel which is spinning very fast, and on either side of the metal wheel are electromagnetic pickups, and as it spins, it creates a tone, and then that tone is altered to through these drawbars to create different textures and different timbres and sounds. So as I pull out the drawbars, increasing some of the overtones and higher as they go to the right. When I used to have the organ next to the piano, it was too much of a reach for me to reach completely perpendicular and have work this volume pedal. So our old sound man, guitar builder, wonderful friend Paul Languedoc built me this satellite pedal which functions so that I can operate that pedal with this one using sort of bike cables and that sort of thing. He was able to rig this up so that I can control it without having to reach all the way over there. It's not quite as important now that the keyboard's not right next to the piano, but a very cool feature on this, which is unique to my organ here, and which I like a lot. I also have a delay. As long as we're down here, I have a delay which will and create the length of the delay I want just by tapping on that pedal. This is my fast-slow switch, which allows my Leslie speaker to spin fast and slow, and we'll get some pictures of this in a minute, but this is the sound slow, and this is spinning fast. And this is a mechanical situation. There's a horn on the top of the speaker which is spinning one direction, and there's a horn on the bottom, a bass which is spinning a different direction. And as I hit this, they speed up and slow down, and that's what gives the Hammond organ that whooshy, swirly sound, which is so distinctive and unique. On this register, I use a percussive sound as well, which I'm able to adjust with this knob. One of the ones we do on the Hammond here. And you can hear that percussive sound that's coming through as well. I have it turned up pretty loud. If I take the percussion out, it sounds like this. When I bring the percussion in, you can hear the difference. It gives that really sharp attack. That'd be for that song. And I'd like to talk about my Fender Rhodes electric piano. This was developed by Harold Rhodes in 1946. He was trying to develop keyboards to help recovering World War II veterans and give them something to do and help them develop their motor skills and that sort of a thing. And it ended up being something that has continued on for all these years. The way that this keyboard generates its sound, similar to the Wurlitzer uses a fine metal reed, as you remember, which looks like this, with a small piece of lead used to tune it. This is the tine from the Rhodes, so it's a piece of metal that sits in there, and there's actually sort of a tuning fork around it, but this is where the sound is actually generated. There's a little spring on the end of this that, by sliding back and forth, you can adjust the tuning. Closer this way makes it higher, further this way brings the pitch down. And electromagnetic pickups, just like on a guitar, on either side of this. And that's how hammer hits the key. This vibrates, and that is how sound is generated in the Rhodes. Also, we use this keyboard quite a bit. A song like 2001 is something I've always played on this keyboard. Punch You in the Eye is another one. Now the Fender Rhodes, I play this also through a phaser, a phase shifter, an old Maestro phase shifter, which allows me to, and I usually keep it on sort of a medium setting, but if I want to turn it up to a high setting, it'll sound, this is medium. This is a high, quick phase shifting. I also have a vibrato, which is built into the keyboard, which this is a stereo keyboard, so it's being played out of both speakers coming out in the front of house, and I can make it move from side to side depending on how I move these knobs here. So this is a fast. I'll slow it down a little bit. This is going to be hard to read unless you have some stereo equipment at home there, but the sound goes back and forth, and I've had this keyboard in my rig since the 90s, and huge fan of the Rhodes. Really, really like playing it. Very full sound, very warm sound. I'd like to talk about my Yamaha CS60. These are keyboards which were manufactured from 1976-77 up through, I believe, 85. And it is the younger sibling of the CS80, which is a giant keyboard which weighs almost 300 pounds and has, instead of one area to create some memory and presets in here. If I were to lift this up, you would see there's a number of presets which look just like this rig up here. And the CS80 actually had 4 of these, as well as more presets and a few other functions as well. But these keyboards were very popular in the 80s, and it's something that I think I brought into my rig in, I want to say, around 96. Some of the songs that I play on this little song called The Meat Stick. The Meat Stick. And it's something we've gotten into. It was the first synthesizer that I had on stage. So for many years, I listened back recently to something from Big Cypress when we played down there, and we played Sand, and it was a big long jam, and Trey was actually playing it for me, and I heard these sounds that I had sort of, as I increased all the other keyboards in here, I'd sort of forgotten about all the cool things that this original one to my rig had. And another song that I use this for would be What's the Use, and some of the sort of swirly sounds up and down that you hear. So one of my favorite keyboards, the Yamaha CS60, and something we've been playing on stage for almost 30 years now. Love it. On top of my Yamaha, I have my Sequential Circuits Prophet Rev 2. This is the newest keyboard I've brought into my rig. I just started playing this on stage in Mexico this last year. And this is a keyboard that was developed by Dave Smith. I mentioned Dave Smith, the inventor of MIDI. He started the company in the 70s and built this keyboard. It was a keyboard that was used a lot, late 70s, early 80s especially. You'll hear it on Michael Jackson records, Madonna records. It came in and became hugely popular. A lot of people started playing these, found it very easy to manipulate the parameters, and as a result, and also it wasn't quite as giant as some of these Yamahas that they were building around that time. So it became very popular, and I am just, again, another keyboard I'm scratching the surface with, but it has great warmth and great sounds. This is one I've been using a lot lately. Is I think an homage to Bernie Worrell that they. They have one here that is is listed as the Toto French horn. And again, this has some of those same features that you'd have over on the Moog, where you have touch capability. If you're pressing on it and I press harder, an effect will kick in. So this is the sound without lightly touching it, with lightly touch. And then touch harder. A little harder. So that's like a vibrato pitch. So most of the sounds in here will have their own parameters that are related to the touch sensitivity on this keyboard. Sadly, Dave Smith passed away this year, and we have been marking that with just a little note on our keyboard here. Rest in peace, Dave. Thank you so much for this keyboard. Love it. I'd like to talk about my Hohner clavinet, Hohner D6 clavinet. These were manufactured between 1964 and 1982. The way that the tone is generated with this keyboard is there are strings. Actually, I can show you. I can lift this up and show you some of the strings in here. See these strings going down here. They are taut, tightly tuned, and each string, when I hit the key, just like in a piano, there's a mechanical action that causes a hammer to hit. It's a rubber hammer. It's sort of supposed to replicate the sound of a clavichord, which is a Renaissance era instrument. It's something that you know the sound of from Stevie Wonder. Superstition was one of his classic clavinet sounding songs. And we use it quite a bit as well. Songs like No Man and No Man's Land. Turn off that right now. I play this clavinet through a wah-wah pedal and a phase shifter. I've turned those off right now so you can just hear what the sound of the clavinet is in its raw state. And I usually am playing it with a wah-wah, which sounds sort of like this. So that's the clavinet with the wah. When I put the phase shifter on, it gives it a little bit of a warble to the sound. And I can adjust the speed of that. And I've been playing with a Hohner clavinet on my piano for many, many years, and it's always fun to stand up and play this. And I can feel a connection with the crowd this way too. Just first of all, I can see them over the piano, and it is kind of a dance-invoking instrument. People seem to like it, so love playing this thing. We're going to talk about the piano now. This is a Yamaha C7. This is the third grand piano that I've had with Phish. I bought the first one, or we bought the first one in 1993. We bought another one in 2001, and then we just bought this one, I believe, in 2019. I really like the Yamahas. They seem to be very roadworthy. They hold their tuning well. They don't mind being turned up on their side and loaded into cases every night and driven up to 9,000 feet altitudes, and then staying in the truck when it's 20 below, and coming out and playing at the gorge where there's no humidity and 90 degrees. And there are so many things for this piano to acclimate to, and so many bumps in the road, literally. But I've been very happy with the Yamaha, and it's a 7.5 foot grand piano. I probably play piano on more Phish songs than any other instrument because it's the one that I've just been focused on since birth, and this is a really nice one, and I have a wonderful keyboard tech, Eddie Piotrowski, that tunes it beautifully for me every day. So. Thanks very much for watching my rig tour. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope to see you out on the road.